you're back in this smoke-filled room, and we've got a lot to cover. So I'm going to get right into our introductions. We have back with us yet again, because he just apparently likes all the problems we like to cause him, Craig Wilcox, State Senator for the 32nd District, previously served on the McHenry County Board, is also a veteran, a small business owner. Craig, we're glad you're here.
Always good to be here. No smoke in this cold-filled basement of our retail, but I'll get through. If I lean over this way, it's just the heater keeping me somewhat toasty.
Nice. Yeah, we probably get more grief for that than anything else on this podcast. Is where's the smoke? Because during the winter, I can't really smoke inside, especially because Teddy tends to be right up above me, and I'm not going to mess around with that. So no cigars during the winter, which is also probably why I tend to be a lot nicer during the summer than I am during the winter. But hey, what are you going to do? We also have with us Hannah Billingsley, who was a candidate for state representative in the 49th district. She turned a lot of heads in that race and gained a lot of interest from people who said didn't know who this person was, but man, she ran a surprisingly good campaign. She's also a small business owner. Hannah, glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be on here. And for everybody out there listening, if you want to be a guest, all you have to do is troll these people hard enough and they'll just fall right into the trap and invite you on.
Don't say that, because I got a guy who's actually a friend who messages me like 4 times a day on Twitter who really wants to be on. So all you've done is empowered that dude, and he knows who he is, and I love you, buddy. But yeah, he'll be on soon too. Thanks for making my life harder, Hannah. Love you for that. Next, we have Mark Cavers, who's joining us. He's been on with us a number of times. He's a political consultant. He's had a lot of success electing Republicans and conservatives throughout the state. Also, I will personally say a pretty smart dude that I love having on. Mark, glad to have you.
Thanks for having
We're all looking forward to that. I said smart dude, but that's a good transition into what is the opposite of that. Hey, what's up, Chris? Glad to have you, buddy.
All glory to the Democratic Party, Collin.
Ooh, all right. And we got Michael Butler, the what is it, the mayor of Butlerville down in Southern Illinois. What's going on, bud?
Sure, that sounds good. Let's
What's
get
the,
after it.
you got all the plants in the background? This is like a new thing for you. You actually have a background. What's up? You at mommy and daddy's house?
Nah, I'm house sitting.
Butler have a girlfriend?
I only get it for 1 week. You only get this for 1 week.
I mean, it's kind of nice. You're not sitting in the corner of a closet or something.
Yeah, that's true.
No, we most of us have professional backgrounds here, at least to put some intention into it. I like it. Chris has always got his. None of us want to know what's in that weird cabinet of horrors, but one of these days he'll give us a tour. All right, let's get serious. We'll get into some topics. Sometimes we'll start on national topics, and with the inauguration of a new, or not really new, president, Donald Trump, this coming Monday, we probably should talk some national topics. And for me, while this is a catch-all topic, and you all can take it any direction you'd like on national things, what really stands out to me is that I love what I'm seeing out of Republicans, and that they are putting Democrats on the spot. Dems do this to us all the time, making us vote on bills that they know we can't vote for, that will look really, really bad in a mail piece or in a TV ad. Democrats are excellent in that, and Republicans have been doing that a lot lately to the Democrats, forcing them to vote to put either a yay or a nay vote on deporting illegals who are criminals, violent criminals at that, forcing them to put a vote on whether or not they're going to ban men in women's sports. I want to see more of this, more of forcing Democrats to actually put a vote on controversial topics. Again, Dems are great at this, putting us on the line. If we do this more and more over the next 2 years, from a political standpoint, maybe not from a governing standpoint, it's a step in the right direction. Curious what you guys think with a new era, I guess, in politics starting on Monday. What are your thoughts? What do you think you're going to see over the next 2 or 4 years?
Well, I think like you said, I mean, you got the Lake and Riley Act that was able to get, a significant number of Democrat votes, both in the House and in the Senate, which is a good sign. And then also you look at some of these hearings that they've had in the Senate for Trump's cabinet picks. And it seems like Democrats have really had a hard time like finding their footing and figuring out kind of the line of attack, which is a good sign for us. I mean, I think eventually they'll probably figure out what they're doing, but right now it does not seem like they know what direction that they need to go over the course of the next 2 years.
Listen, this is how it works. I mean, that's why the incumbents usually have a few months, because it takes a while to figure out that narrative. I mean, the Tea Party started up 3.5 months into Obama's term. You see that a lot of these movements, it takes a few months to figure it out. That's why they always say you get a few months to govern and then it all goes to crap. So, Michael, you're right. It's going to take them a little time, because it always takes a little time. And that's your opportunity. That's your window of opportunity to get some big stuff done.
And good on Republicans to like push that envelope now when the Democrats are still doing their like autopsy to decide what kind of party they're going to be and who they're going to appeal to. Let's force them to pick a side on that stuff. I also think like, I mean, we always in Illinois, you're in the super minority, you don't have that luxury, but it gives us at least an opening to glob onto those things. And like you have Leader McCombie and Regan, Deering, and others who have legislation that would do similar to what the national folks are doing on transgender girls in sports. And so at least like gives us an opening in to talk about those issues, even if we can't force votes.
Yeah, totally.
The general consensus when I talk to people is that the Democratic Party, if they're competent, is going to run hard to the middle over the next couple of years. The issue is that there's too many competing interests within the Democratic Party, all of which are vying to be the national chairperson of the DNC right now. So you're not really going to see a cohesive message from the Democrats, either going to the center or reverting back to the left in the Trump era. Some of it is going to be up to Trump, to be fair. If you see Trump have a really successful 3 to 6 months at the beginning of his administration, the Democrats might look one way, maybe revert to the middle and go that way. Or if it's really bad, maybe Democrats feel they're capable of going back to the left, maintaining their extreme policies on a number of issues, and they're not as worried going into 2026 if the first few months of the Trump administration is unsuccessful. So first, the Democrats are going to have to get through the new pick for chairman of the DNC and the vice chairman of the DNC, and then they're gonna have to see where Trump's presidency goes. It also might not matter because there's a lot of special interests within the Democratic Party which are going to dictate you need to stand tall on this issue, or we're not going to donate on that because of that. So there's a lot of different moving parts here, but good on the Republicans for putting their feet to the fire. And that's the only compliment you'll have me give to DC Republicans ever on this podcast.
Listen, you mentioned the DNC. I mean, it would be a gift from God if if Jonathan Jackson were to get that nod. So we can all cross our fingers and see if that happens. But you're right. I mean, are they going to go the Fetterman route, or are they going to go the Gavin Newsom route and the JB Pritzker route? We're going to find out in the coming months.
Well, another thing that I think is interesting for people, that are listening to our podcast, since we're, focused on Illinois, is on the House side, you look at these bills like the Lake and Riley Act and the men and women's sports. All Illinois Democrats voted no on both of those bills. So the Illinois Democrats are not making a move, to the center. The congressional representatives aren't, at least. Compared to some of these other states where you see, vulnerable Democrats or Democrats in more competitive states, they're making that shift. So if Caston and others want to continue to go down this woke progressive route, I mean, they go for it, but it could backfire on you in the future if you don't watch out.
I mean, how many times have we talked about this, Michael, with how cocky Democrats have become in this state? They just feel like they can do whatever they want, which means going further and further left. With Trump in office for the next 4 years, it may be difficult for us to win some of these congressional seats, but my goodness, you look at maybe 2030 could just be the Republican tsunami in this state if these Democrats keep pushing forward these crazy far left things in Illinois.
And if you guys, like building on your conversation last week, if you're right that there's going to be all these open, competitive Dem primaries, then that's going to continue to pull people to the left. And so that won't change.
Yeah, totally. You're 100% right. All right, let me move us to our next topic. You all know, if you watched more than one episode of this, I hate talking national politics. So let's get to Illinois. There's too many podcasts about national politics. All right, we're going to cover two topics that are in the news and hot right now in the Republican circles and conservative circles. I just want to make clear, I don't want to talk about either of these. So we're going to knock them out. We're going to hit them. Then we're going to get to other things because I'm sick and tired of Republicans attacking Republicans, and that's basically what these next two topics are. First one is this: the infighting, as we've talked about, it continues. We talked a lot last week about the situation with Tony McCombie and a bill she voted for 2 years ago that's now making the rounds. And we also talked about how McCombie hasn't necessarily handled it super well, and unfortunately that has led to this thing continuing. And now we're talking about it for a second week because Tom DeVore has now filed a lawsuit against McCombie because she blocked him from her page and was deleting comments from her page. And so now this has become a thing that's dragged on for yet another week. So Michael and Chris, I know you guys have some pretty strong thoughts on this, so I'll pass it to you guys first, and we'll go from there.
I mean, I think it's just another example of us being childish as Republicans. Like, we just go from one spat to the next, and you never know who's going to be next on the list of people we don't like for a 2-week period, and then we move on to the next one. And it's a major distraction. And, we've talked a lot in previous weeks, and we're going to talk a lot today about some of the ignorant and stupid things that Democrats are doing. But instead of us as Republicans focusing our, attention on those issues and making Facebook posts about that, we're making Facebook posts about a bill that was passed 2 years ago, and we're blocking people on Facebook, and we're deleting comments. And it just seems like it reminds you of like 10th grade, like so-and-so said something about so-and-so on Facebook and they didn't like it. So they blocked them, and now they're not invited to Sally's birthday party. And just, what are we doing? What are we doing? I don't get it. The Democrats are, trying to legalize prostitution in the state of Illinois, and they're raising taxes, and they're, we're losing people to other states on a daily basis. Indiana over here is licking their chops trying to figure out how they can get some of our counties to become part of their state, which for the people that live close to that Indiana border, they'd be a hell of a lot better off.
So Michael's already in the early lead for bringing the heat this week. Well done, buddy. What are your thoughts?
So as someone who probably lives closer to Indiana than anybody else on this podcast, I don't think that I will be moving to Indiana, nor do I support annexation from our neighbor to the east. Irregardless,
I don't think they take you, Chris.
You're probably right. There's no.
They don't want those kind of voters.
Hold on, Chris would fit in well in Gary, Indiana. What are you talking about?
That's true, right. Gary, I love Gary, Indiana. That's right. In any case, the point I was trying to make is that there is a basis in theory for this lawsuit, because the alderman in the 45th ward of the city of Chicago, Jim Gardner, he had to pay a fine because he blocked people on his official Facebook page. Gardner's got a lot of other problems, even though he's a pretty decent guy. Blah 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 blah. Doesn't matter. The issue is that Gardner blocked people on his official government Facebook page, and every source I'm seeing is that DeVore got blocked by McCombie's political page. So who cares? Like, no, again, it's like, is it like a politically smart decision for DeVore? Yeah, I guess, because it gets his name in the news, and it lets some people, not like Tony McCombie anymore. What these people probably didn't like her to begin with if they're on DeVore's side. But this lawsuit's not going to go anywhere if it's her political page, because if it's a political page, she can block whoever she wants. It's a personal page for political purposes. I'm blocked by political pages. Marie Newman's never going to unblock me, nor should she. But the point is that, like, it's kind of a frivolous lawsuit. Politically, yeah, it's a nice little win for DeVore because he gets to have McCombie have a little egg on her face, but it's just... Well,
and Chris, you mostly have merit on that, and that, yes, Tony McCombie has 2 pages. One is clearly her official page. One is clearly her political page, and this will happen on her political page. So she's done what I know the House Republican lawyers always tell all their members to do, which is separate the 2 pages. That said, we still at CORE have encouraged our clients not to do this for 2 reasons. One, legally, the judicial ruling that opened the door to this back in 2023, and I can't believe I'm saying those words, back in 2023, was pretty ambiguous. It did allow for a little bit of space here, which is what DeVore is kind of leaning into to file this lawsuit. And so we tell our candidates and our elected officials, actually our elected officials, you're a candidate, you can do whatever you want. But once you're an elected, we tell them don't do this. Just because there is a small window where you might get sued and you might actually have to settle or lose it. And so we tell them don't do this. So I wouldn't have done this if I was McCombie from a legal standpoint, but more from a practical standpoint. I mean, if you look at her political page, it doesn't get much activity. And yet once this happened, her activity was going through the roof. We tell our people when somebody, and this is advice for anybody watching this, when somebody puts negative comments on your page, don't block them or delete them. That is a gift. They are helping you. They are increasing your score in the algorithm. Thanks to Tom DeVore and Darren Bailey and everybody else, all the rest of Tony McCombie's posts are now going to be seen significantly more on Facebook because of all this activity that they have brought to her page. If you're smart, you lean into that. You don't respond. What you do is you go build a rapid response team or an RRT. a bunch of people who are supporters, and you get them to go in and defend you. So you're not doing it, they're doing it. And now look at this. It's a back and forth. Now you're getting 70 comments, 100 comments, 200 comments. It's a gold mine for the algorithm and for your ability to cheat the system, and your opponents are now helping you. It's smart tactics, and this is what I go back to what I said last week is what drives me crazy is this didn't need to be a controversy. It could have been handled way, way better, yes, by both sides, but I'm speaking more to the Republican leader side. It could have been handled better, and tactically, if you're smart with things like this, you can turn them around to your advantage. And that's what I'm begging is for us as a party to become tactically smarter. Because if we can't handle Illinois Review and Tom DeVore as the Republican leader, then how the hell are we going to take on the billionaire J.B. Pritzker and the unions and all of our opponents? And that's what drives me crazy is this should not have been this hard. It shouldn't be something we're talking about.
I've
Collin,
never missed an episode of Love is Blind. Okay. So I'm here for all this drama that's unfolding. I love it so much, but also at some point you got to move past it. And, you see this in a lot of spaces, right? Like people, instead of getting caught up in the primary objectives, it's like we get so hung up on like secondary and tertiary issues. And it's the Illinois people who end up hurting because of things like this. And so I think Tom has so many gifts and, so much to offer. And I think the sooner the better that he can, find a different passion project, I think we'll all win. So
I think that's the point, right? We're wasting resources, and why not put our best efforts against the Democrats? You see the blog that likes to constantly rail on Republicans. There's several of them. Obviously, Tom has got a personal beef with McCombie and just wants to go after her. And I certainly understand all that. It's politics. But, this is some people have said it, and it's true. This happens in deep blue states where Republicans can't win. So we start attacking each other so we feel better. Look, I won because I beat DeVore or McCombie, and it makes us feel better, but that's not actually our opponent. And thank God I get a chance to work in other states, which has happened over the last couple of years because Illinois is constantly drives me crazy. And I'll tell you, I don't see this problem in other states. I'm going to Pennsylvania as soon as we're done recording this, and I don't see this problem in Pennsylvania. It's just in a few states, and Illinois is one of those, where we spend all of our time and resources attacking each other when they should be spent attacking, as Michael said, the other side. And that's a pox on both sides of this equation.
And Collin, I mean, the timing couldn't be worse, right? Because the House Dems are giving Tony and the House Republicans all kinds of opportunities to focus on that dysfunction within their caucuses there within Illinois. And we're getting ready to go into a brand new General Assembly. We should be focusing on what the Dems plan on bringing, how we want to be talking about it, and educating the clients of Illinois, and not having this bickering back and forth.
Yeah, well, and Senator, you are right on in that. Right now is when bills are being filed down in Springfield. We've got a window over the next couple of months where this is where the craziest stuff is going to come out. The Rachel Venturas of the world are going to be putting in their nut job bills. Who's the state rep from Downers Grove? Why am I blanking on her name right now?
Anstava Murray.
Yeah, I mean, she's always good for a couple crazy bills every cycle. I mean, this is where any representative can file any bill right now. As you get towards the end of session, we cut a lot of this stuff out and they start to focus on the bills that actually might get a vote. These first couple of months, this is when anyone can do whatever the heck they want, and that's when the craziness comes out. And so over the next couple of months, what we need to be focusing on is highlighting the nuttiness of Democrats and their extreme agenda. And as you said, Craig, this is obviously taking away the focus from that. Well, let's go to the next topic here so we can move on from the infighting in the party. Let's talk about this because I think both sides have handled these situations pretty poorly. Here's another situation just like that. The House Republican leadership was announced, and no members of the Illinois Freedom Caucus in the House are in that Republican leadership. I think, surprisingly, some of you actually agree with that position, so I'll pass it to you in a second. But the Freedom Caucus is obviously unhappy. They put out a press release, talked about how frustrated they are about this. Dan Calkins, who has retired but was a member of the Freedom Caucus, went on Facebook and unloaded a bit on this now that he no longer has to be more balanced since he's not in the Springfield anymore. It's interesting. I've had some conversations offline with some people about this, and I'm hearing it from both sides, really. Both sides are like, well, it's the other side's fault. And honestly, before y'all go into your thing. And I know, especially, Chris and Butler, you guys are a bit frustrated about this, but for me, I see problems on both sides in this situation. Yeah, the Freedom Caucus ain't working with McCombie on a lot of things, so I understand why there'd be some frustration on McCombie's side. But like, couldn't we just all be adults? I think Hannah said this pretty well. Like, let's just all be adults and sit down and figure out how we can work together because we're in the super minority. And so, yeah, this may only be 5 members of the caucus, but that's 15% of the caucus, almost 15%. Like, it's not like it's nobody. This is a significant chunk of our caucus that is not represented in a single leadership position. I feel like we could do better.
Well, I was going to say, there's 4 Freedom Caucus members that made a decision not to attend the inauguration, to have a separate inauguration at the Capitol. They refused to vote for Tony or anybody to be in a leadership position like on inauguration day. So I don't really know what they expected, like that, they're not going to show up to the inauguration. They're not going to vote for her to be leader. And then they just expect that she's going to give them a position and a stipend, like as a result of that. I don't know. It's just like, it's kind of.
But Mike, you're right.
Nobody should be surprised.
I would concede your point. I do concede your point, Michael. You're right. But I think the problem here is this is what happens. This side does this, and then this side does that, and this side does this, and we keep doing this race to the bottom. And then each person gets to point to what the other side just did. Oh, you just did X, which is why now I'm doing this. And then, well, you just did X, so now I'm going to dip even lower. And we just keep doing this race to the bottom. And you're 100% right. The Freedom Caucus was petty when it came to McCombie. Listen, she won. She's the leader. She's your leader for the next 2 years, whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, beat her with somebody, and they weren't able to do it. So yes, they were petty by not going and voting for her during the inauguration. But then she was even more petty by not putting them in leadership. And we keep doing this race to the bottom. And at the end of the day, while I say it's on both sides, and both sides need to do better, one of them is the leader. McCombie is the leader. And you know what? If someone's going to rise above, you want it to be that leader because they're supposed to be a leader. And so can somebody rise above? Yeah, I'd love to see it if the Freedom Caucus did. And you know what? They put an olive branch or 2 out during the election, going and knocking on doors for people who weren't even members of their Freedom Caucus. So it's not to say they haven't put out any olive branches. So there's some there. And maybe you're not going to put Blaine Wilhauer, Chris Miller in your leadership team, but Jed Davis is, a lot like Calkins, a lot more of a bit more reasonable of the group. Maybe you say, hey, can we put Jed somewhere, or can we work something out? You sit down with Collin Mosley, who's been on this podcast, who's proven to be pretty reasonable, and you say, hey, listen, we can't take so-and-so and so-and-so. There's too much bad blood, but could you give us this person? Let's start to build some bridges. Someone needs to sit down and be an adult and say, you know what? We're done with this high school drama. What can we do to work together? That's all I'm asking for. You're not going to put Chris Miller in as your House floor leader. I get that. But you could find something here to build a bridge.
So my big thing on this topic is who cares? Like, what's it matter? Who's in leadership or not? We're in a super duper minority, perhaps soon to be the super D duper minority. Who cares who's in leadership? Who cares if we throw the Freedom Caucus a bone? Maybe we should do that. I don't know. I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to your point, we are in the super minority and we don't have much of a voice in Springfield, but isn't that more of a reason to make sure that we have our full party represented? Like we say, we're a big tent. Let's be a big tent. I've been watching this for almost 20 years in Illinois. Moderates blame conservatives for everything that goes wrong. Conservatives blame moderates for everything. Establishment blames non-establishment. Non-establishment blames establishment. There's so many fractures in our party. We've been watching it over and over and over, and they all just blame each other. At the end of the day, they're most of the time both right. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. But let's work together.
What's the plan? Like, okay, let's sit down and determine a plan. We're going to put Jed Davis or whoever in the leadership position. Okay, now what's the plan? We got the House Freedom Caucus guy in the leadership team. What does that change in the overarching strategy of the House Republican caucus down in Springfield? What just changed that we did that?
So you're almost making an argument to do it because obviously it didn't make such a bad impact that nothing changed. But listen, there's things both sides can bring to the equation. I mean, the Republicans have always struggled nationally, let alone locally, have always struggled being interesting and getting coverage. I mean, Hannah, to your credit, one of the reasons why I loved your candidacy is you were actually interesting. And so few Republican candidates do that. They put out their white paper solutions and they get all stilted and I am a robot, please vote for me. And you know what? One of the things the Freedom Caucus has proven is they're pretty good at lighting a fire and getting people people interested. So maybe that's a skill set they could bring to the House caucus. And you know what? If you sit down and work together, you find ways to govern together. We keep expecting conservatives to become governing conservatives, yet we never give them a chance to make that transition. I look at Senator Wilcox. I look at Tom Weber. So many people were freaked out when Tom Weber got elected representative because he was the head of a Tea Party. And he must be a nut job because he's the head of the Tea Party. And he went down there and he proved that you can be a conservative and stand strong on principle. We're also still being a governing conservative. But you can't expect these members of the Freedom Caucus to be governing conservatives if you never let them govern. So like, let's let them be that Tom Weber where they show that they can be rock solid conservatives who also still govern and lead, but you got to give them a chance.
So, Chris, I'm going to push back a little bit on what you said. You said, what does it matter? And I hear you, but also I think symbolism really does matter right now. I think it matters that our leader, whoever's in leadership, is always welcoming people to the table and always having the same type of people show up to the table. That's what creates all of these vacuums in our state and our country. And so, I think even just from going door to door, people loved that I was bipartisan in nature, all those things. And so it's something I look for. I think the majority of people look for that. And besides how it looks, the results of that, I think, are far superior to actually what happens when just the same type of person, same type of people keep showing up to the table.
Well, I mean, listen, you look at these districts, like it or hate it, go spend some time in each of these districts. The people that these representatives represent agree with what they're saying. I mean, you may not like it, but guess what? Shelbyville is not the same as Plainfield. It's not the same as Lake Zurich. It's not the same as any of these other communities. They're all different. And you look at the communities these people represent. Whether you like it or not, they like what they're doing. That's what those communities are. They're deep red, Trump country, super uber conservative. They represent a certain constituency. They are people. The people they represent are citizens of Illinois. They deserve a seat at the table down in Springfield. Just because they think differently than the South Side of Chicago doesn't make them any less of a citizen of this state.
And the tougher part is,
Craig, why don't you close us out on this topic? Go ahead.
Yeah, Leader McCombie can't afford to alienate them to the point where they, do everything separate from the caucus. There are going to be issues that come up this year where those guys may be the better voice to actually go hammer the Dems on something, and you're going to want to be able to coordinate and have that discussion. And then, maybe a few other of your members temper that a little bit, but they're going to want them as the lead at certain times. And we've already got some bills filed that I think they'll be the better spokespeople on. And so let them take that, but in a coordinated way, not in an opposing aspect.
And Craig, that's exactly what we do in other states. I mean, you've got your attack dogs and everyone has a different skill set. And you say, hey, listen, you're going to go on the front lines on this. And then, hey, someone else is going to have to come in. And as you said, temper it, moderate it, and say, hey, well, some of us may think a little differently. Like, that's how you coordinate. That's how you win. But you can't do that if you're not sitting at the same table. All right, let's move on and let's aim our guns at the other side, like we're telling our audience to do so. Let's talk about the Democrats and something that's come up more and more, and we'll see how much we hear about this over the next 2 years. Is this idea of the progressive tax coming back, though in different form? What you saw on the ballot in 2024 was this millionaires tax. It's not the first time we've seen that. Mike Madigan wanted to push the millionaires tax, so this is not a new thing that we're seeing. But Pat Quinn has taken the lead, and CTU has jumped on board, and so now I'm calling it the CTU millionaires tax. And this might be something we see in 2026, changing the tax structure in the state. The couple reasons why I think this actually might have some legs. We'll see if it happens, but a couple things. Number one, you're seeing people line up behind this as a potential, because there were two key changes that you saw here. Jay Hoffman kind of hinted at this in an interview where he talked about the fact that they think that their progressive tax failed because, we all lied, right of center and blah, blah, blah. But really it was two other things that came up. Number one was that there was nothing there that explained how this money would be spent, and number two was that we were given opportunities to lie about the brackets, which we didn't. And so what they've done here is making it just on millionaires locks in those brackets because it's in the name. It's just millionaires that we're hitting. And then saying this will go to property tax relief, which we know actually won't happen. But again, if you put that in the language, they think this is overcoming the two biggest challenges that they faced the last time they tried this. So I think this actually does have some legs. It's not going to solve their problems in 2025 or even 2026 when it comes to the budget. But Pritzker has hinted a number of times that the only way to fix the revenue problems that the state has is to change the structure like this. And so I would not be surprised if this is not at least a serious topic of conversation in the coming months and possibly something they put on the ballot in 2026. So who has thoughts?
I'll kick you off, Collin. The reason I don't think this is going to be their prime aspect is if you look at the history of Dems and tax increases, the state likes to keep it. And that's why in 2025, I think the biggest issue is the LGDF, the Local Government Distributive Fund. $2.3 billion sitting there that the state already collects and then returns back to the municipalities at a much lower rate. The 2011 temporary income tax increase, the 2017 one, they reduced the percentages to the municipalities so the state kept all of that new revenue. I think the grocery tax was a precursor. The governor got away with it. He made the munis look like the bad people. I think he steals a majority, if not all, of the LGDF this year and possibly promises a constitutional amendment to allow the municipalities to collect income tax, therefore keeping the money that the state already collects and making the municipalities look like the bad people to backfill what the state stole.
Interesting. Haven't heard anybody else talk about that. That's something to keep an eye on. Anybody have thoughts on progressive / millionaires tax?
Well, here's my thing. This isn't. There's two things. Number one, I appreciate the fact that you made the distinction between this tax and the fair tax of 2020, that referendum, because I've been seeing a lot of discourse online that basically makes it sound like it's the same thing, and it's not. So I appreciate the consistency there. We have to remember that Jay Hoffman's right. The Democrats didn't run a particularly good campaign with the fair tax in 2020. And the Republicans ran a pretty good campaign against the fair tax in 2020. That's not going to be, I don't know if that's going to be the case in 2026 or whenever they want to put this on the ballot. Not necessarily to say that the Republican Party is incapable of running a good opposition to this amendment, but I think the Democratic Party is going to be in a much better shape this year as opposed to the COVID year in running a full boat positive message referendum on this topic. Now, that being said, it was the worst performing advisory referendum on the 2024 ballot. And looking at some of the numbers at a precinct level, at a township level, there is fall off from the Democratic ticket in some of these upper middle class, upper class suburbs that we saw with the fair tax in 2020. It wasn't to that extent. You're not seeing Kenilworth vote 70% against the progressive tax while voting for Joe Biden. You're not seeing that. But you are seeing a little bit of that. So I would anticipate it's not a sure thing that this thing would fail. It's not a sure thing that it would pass. But I would encourage Republicans to look at the numbers and say, it is possible that this thing actually passes and take it seriously if you choose to oppose this referendum. And I would tell the Democrats that it's no guarantee that you pass this thing. Take the Republicans seriously, look at the underlying data, and actually craft a message that's appealing to voters that you didn't have in 2020.
Yeah, listen, Chris, when I look at the opposition, there were two main groups that opposed the progressive tax last time around. The Business Coalition, which we had the honor of working with. And I think about the four main organizations that put that together. All four of those organizations are under new leadership than they were that last time around. So would they come together like they did last time around? I certainly hope so, but again, it's a question. And then the other group was funded by Mr. Big Money Bucks, who doesn't live in Illinois anymore, who dropped $50 million into running TV ads to be the air game for this. So you do have some factors here where it might seem that it's maybe more difficult for conservatives or Republicans to oppose it this time around. So there's reasons, again, why I think they may at least approach this thinking that they could possibly get it done. And as you said, it's going to take right and center coming together here and actually working together to achieve a victory if you're going to stop something like this. I think on my side, this is where I'm waffling. Everything I look at shows that high income earners are breaking dramatically for Democrats. High income earners are now the biggest donors to Democrats, not Republicans. Democrats are now the party of the rich, not Republicans. And so I'm wondering just how much more political capital we're going to waste defending those high income earners when at the end of the day they're not voting for us, they're not donating to us. It's middle class Americans who are actually turning to Republicans in droves. So personally, I'm a little conflicted on this because I like beating Pritzker and I want to beat this thing a second time. And from a business perspective, this is awful. But from a working family perspective, from an individual perspective, is it really my job to continue to defend the wealthy when they don't vote Republican or donate Republican? I don't know.
I've worked at this company for 4 years. There'll be 4 years next week, actually. And I can say I'm rubbing off on Collin because Collin of 4 years ago would never have said that ever in his life because he loved the Millionaires 4 years ago. So now I'm glad that we're back on the same page here now.
In reality, it's the fact that they've stopped supporting Republicans, so I don't know why I need to keep supporting them. But again, from a business perspective, this thing's a killer. Hannah and others, I mean, I'm a small business owner. People just don't understand how much this is actually rough on business owners, especially you look at like family farmers, manufacturers. There's a reason why this thing would need to be defeated, but I'd be defeating it for small business owners, farmers, manufacturers. I would not be defeating it for millionaires because they can fight their own damn battles.
So, Collin, since this was recently on the ballot and was defeated, I kind of have a feeling that the message to defeat it again is a little easier path to create than what the Dems would have to do, which is convince everyone that was a no, that this is different enough that you can be a yes now. And I think that messaging is maybe a bit too nuanced to be easy. And so I'm hopeful that if they do bring it along, that we tie it to the past defeat. And turning votes is difficult, right? Now it's in people's minds once already.
Yep. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I point to, everyone likes to say that non-binding resolution or referendum passed. It passed with 61% of the vote. Everyone's like, oh, this millionaire tax thing passed, but it passed with super vague language and no opposition campaign, and it barely passed. It got 61% of the vote. And you need somewhere between 56, 57. I don't want to get into the specifics of how that all works, but you need somewhere in that range in order to win. So it was only 3, 4, 5 points above the baseline to actually pass. And that was with, again, vague, flowery language and no opposition campaign. So to Craig's point, the no is baked in already. It's going to be on those people who want this to pass to prove to voters that they deserve that trust. And I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. All right, let's go to the next thing. And I want to start with you, Craig, on this, because obviously you've been a member of the Illinois Senate Transportation Committee for several years at this point, 6+ years maybe. So I want to go to you on this. The RTA just this week came out with their plan for what they want to do about the fiscal cliff and all the problems that we're seeing with public transit in the Chicagoland area. Obviously, as those people who watch our podcast or read the news will know, there's some who want a big merger between CTA, PACE, Metra, and RTA. Most of those are people in Chicago who want to give Chicago a takeover of those systems, and most importantly to them, dump all of their debt on all the rest of us because Chicago's system is dramatically in debt. RTA has come out with their own version of the plan. This is not my bailiwick. I'm not a big policy guy, as most of you know. I'm a political guy. So, Craig, I want to go to you. You may not have had enough time to really dig into this, but initially, what are your thoughts as you're seeing details on this roll out this week?
Well, so as the MMA was kind of discussed, it was that to handle the big funding shortfall, you first needed to change the management structure. And unfortunately, that MMA structure with the governor and the city of Chicago growing a number of members on the board and the reduced aspect of a majority vote, it diluted the opinions of the suburban and the collar counties. And it's not just collar counties, that's suburban Cook as well. And we heard it from the legislators that could be untenable. Now, why is it important? Petra and Mace, their debt pales in comparison to the $5 billion CTA. And when people talk about trains and buses not matching up, I miss one by 2 minutes, I have to wait 14 minutes, ghost buses. That's not PACE and Metra major problems, that's CTA. Now we've got the CTA president ready to step down here at the end of this month. And the challenge that RTA has got to do, and you know, they're getting beat up for coming out at the last minute with this, that they're a little behind the times. Valid point, right? Where were they when these service complaints were going on for the past 4 or 5 years? What pressure were they putting on the CTA? So yeah, once we really get into the nuts of it, I still think the governance structure is going to be the more critical part to make sure the collar counties are clear. I mean, Collar County, you opted into RTA. There's a potential, and people are investigating, can they opt out? And what does that mean? A little less pace in a county like McHenry, maybe not a big deal. Stopping the metro trains at the county border, probably a big deal. So they've got to talk through that as well. But at least a counter proposal will allow us to do the pros and cons and kind of dig in on what's beneficial for each of the members today.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a big thing. We've talked about this a number of times. Just people don't realize some of the biggest fights are when one of these board positions for RTA or one of the transit agencies comes up. There's always a big fight between Cook County and the collars, between Chicago and suburban Cook and the collars. There's always a big fight because it's just a fight over who gets to make decisions. This has been going on for a very long time. I remember one of the first political events I went to. I met I think it was like the RTA board member from McHenry County at the time. And like people are like, oh, it's a big deal. I'm like, why does that matter? Like, no, this is actually a big deal. That position matters, but nobody pays attention to it. So they don't realize just how massive of a fight these typically are and how big of a deal it is to suburban communities to make sure they have representation. That's why I say if you think that the communities and the counties surrounding the city of Chicago are just going to lay down and let Chicago take over, you have no idea. That is absolutely not going to happen.
So some of the members of transportation went over to Germany to see how they do their system. And one of the takeaways that hopefully the Dems on that learned is they are a 100% confirmed vote of all members to be able to move forward on a project. And I think that hopefully should be a little bit enlightening, which tells me maybe we'll see a governance structure that's a little more in line with the supermajority and the outskirt area options and not just a Chicago takeover.
Yeah. Well, I mean, RTA Chairman Kirk Dillard has always been sort of that. He was Jim Edgar's chief of staff. He's that guy who wants to, bring people together and find some common sense sort of middle of the road solution, if you will. So at least I like that he's stepping out and speaking out. It should be helpful because some of the other voices who were dominating the conversation more on the left, if you will, who wanted to bail out Chicago, bail out CTA, give Chicago control. I like that there's a little more balance in the conversation, though. All right, I know that was a weighty sort of issue-based conversation, so I'm sure just in case if anyone else has thoughts, it's okay if you want to skip it. Give you a second. Everybody's good. All right, Craig, I'm glad you were here so you and I could nerd out for a couple minutes. All right, another thing that hit the news this week or in the last week or so is the face of Governor Pritzker's COVID situation, or the state's response, if you will, to the COVID pandemic, left, if you guys, most of you know, but some of our viewers or watchers or listeners may not know, left sort of at the tail end of the pandemic to go head up a hospital. Turns out you can't do that. Now, Republicans are all aware of this because the ethics laws are fairly strict, but Democrats tend to like to write the laws, just not actually follow the laws. And she went to go lead a hospital that had gotten contracts from the state, and that was overseen by the department that she headed. Total no-no. You're supposed to wait at least a year. Many of us believe you should probably just not do it because there's some conflicts of interest there, but whatever. Either way, she's now paying a $150,000 fine, which is the third highest fine in the state of Illinois history when it comes to ethics fines, which is a pretty big deal. And obviously, there's a lot of people on the right who are taking a little bit of a victory lap, especially those who opposed some of the COVID measures when Dr. Ezike was leading that charge. So curious if anybody has any thoughts. At minimum, this is, of course, showing that rank hypocrisy amongst the Democrats, that they will write the laws, they just won't actually follow the laws. What else do you guys think about this whole thing?
Well, and I also think it looks bad on Pritzker. I mean, he put this person in charge for, multiple years during the pandemic. Now she's facing a $150,000 fine. And that's not the first Pritzker administration official or appointee that has gotten themselves in serious trouble. And it sounds like with the PPP loans and some of the investigations that have been going on there's going to be a lot more fines and potentially jail time to come. So put this in the back of your head if you're ever in a position where you're running against Pritzker or you're doing mail against Pritzker or things of that nature, because he's going to be on the ballot here pretty soon, one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's piling up, right, Michael? I mean, it's clear that in Pritzker's administration, there's no oversight. You just just do whatever you want. Don't care if it's legal or not. I mean, Pritzker is not a governor who's actually leading when it comes to the operations of the state. And you see it over and over with these stories week after week with the failures within different departments and divisions, with how this is hurting real people, whether developmentally disabled or veterans, people who needed support from our Department of Unemployment, PPP. Now we're looking at the COVID response. I mean, this is over and over in Pritzker's administration, and it certainly is handling plenty of fodder to an opponent if Pritzker decides to run for office yet again in 2026.
You know, one thing that I find interesting is we've talked, like, for the last 6 episodes, we've brought up Pritzker running for president, people who's running for Senate, all this nonsense. But one thing I've been pretty consistent about is that even if Pritzker decides he's going to run for president in 2028, whatever, there's enough on Pritzker that just hasn't been used because Bailey never really used it during the 2022 governor's race. We really haven't used it beyond anything otherwise in our campaign messaging.
Do you mind? Sorry, Chris, I'm trying to be kind as I interrupt you. So, and I would argue Ronner didn't even use it when Pritzker was just a candidate. I mean, there's stuff not just from Pritzker's being governor. There was stuff from before Pritzker became governor that Ronner's team badly flubbed and didn't use well enough. So there's so much that can be used against Pritzker that just hasn't been vetted with the public. So I think you're making it a tremendous point, and I'm adding to it because I think it goes even further back.
Right, because imagine you're a competitive candidate for the Democratic nomination for president in 2028. And this guy, J.B. Pritzker, is going around the country spending billions of dollars, whatever. He's going to do whatever he wants. But you actually do your Oppo research, and you hire competent people to do your Oppo research, and you look into the state of Illinois finances. You look at the things going on with this PPP fraud in Pritzker's office. You look at these things going on with the veterans homes that we were talking about, the prisoner review board, all these different things that have been happening in Illinois politics over the past, how many years has it been? 7 years at this point, 6 or 7 years at this point. All these things are going on. You're going to use that these aren't things that are only Republicans can use. Anybody can use them to show incompetency in government. This is why I don't believe that J.B. Pritzker will be the Democratic nominee for president of the United States if he chooses to run. Because it doesn't matter how much money you have. The fact is there's enough on the guy to where a competent national campaign would destroy him if he ever got wind beneath his sails. So if you're Pritzker's Tom's team watching, because I know you watch, maybe you want to pass it on to your boss just so you might not.
You worded that as if we disagree. Listen, we may disagree on whether or not he's going to run, whether it's for president or Senate or something else. But where I don't disagree with you on, I 100% agree that even if he does run for president, there is no way in hell he's getting nominated by the Democratic Party nationwide. He missed his one window. He had the one perfect window where he could have been the guy, and everything lined up, and he wasn't able to make it happen. That was it. That was his shot. He's not going to get actually chosen by Democratic primary voters. That's just not possible. The white, overweight, Chicago billionaire, Jewish. There's just so many things that in a Dem primary, it is not going to happen. So that part I agree with you on. But the oppo on him is tremendous, and it goes back before he's been in office. A competent opponent, whether it's for governor or Senate in Illinois or for president nationwide, a competent opponent can beat J.B. Pritzker. Yes, he's got all the money in the world, but at a certain point, the rate of diminishing returns says that money doesn't do much good for you. And if you were able to run a competent campaign with a strong opposition, strong contrast, Pritzker is eminently beatable.
So, Collin, I think Chris was actually a little too nice. He focused on just the governor and the incompetence to govern. I think it's well beyond that. At 7 years, he is the head of the Democrat criminal enterprise. And, the doctor having this lack of ethics, lack of morals, rank hypocrisy, it's not the ultimate criminal aspect, but it just highlights the prevailing avenue of Democrats in government is about self-fulfillment. And now we've got Madigan's trial, right? And what was the governor's answer going to be? I'm running for governor of Illinois. Mike Madigan is the head of the department of the Democrats. And I don't remember meeting with him in December of 2018. Yep. Come on. Yep. That was a baton handover. You remember it, Governor, and you are responsible for every one of these criminal indictments, criminal charges, and lack of ethics of all of those who you have employed in that government. So I don't think it's just incompetence. I think it's the head of the enterprise.
Well, and leaders lead, and certainly this is not a governor who shows any interest in leading.
Oh, and that's a bad combo, incompetence and corruption.
Yes, well, I guess that's true. I guess we prefer incompetence if you're going to be corrupt. All right, let's go to the next topic here. So this story's kind of jumped around in the last couple of days. At first, it was going to be an agenda topic on one thing. Now it's on a different thing, and I think I might have a third thing that I might surprise you guys with on this one. But Brandon Johnson's Q4 fundraising has come out, and if you look at the report, which I don't think has yet been amended, it showed he raised just $971 in Q4, which is big shocker, and spent 282,000. And it's been reported that's the worst fundraising quarter of any mayor in modern Chicago history. Now, his team has come out and they told Politico that no, that was an error. We actually raised about $200,000. We're going to be amending our reports. I don't know how much I believe that. I got to be honest, because this is a mayor and a comms team for the mayor that has been proven to just say anything. And if you've raised $200,000, there are no A1s. So if you've raised $200,000, either you failed to file A1s, which is a big problem, or you raised $200,000 with all contributions below that limit, which doesn't happen. And we would have seen those activities. There would have been fundraisers and big activities happening and low dollar contributions. So I don't know that I believe this whole $200,000 number, but either way, a lot of eyebrows are being raised about Brandon Johnson's Q4 fundraising, especially since some of his likely or potential opponents, like Alexi Janulius, Mike Quigley, maybe Susanna Mendoza, and others, have been doing a pretty dang good job raising money and all had pretty good Q4s when it comes to fundraising. So, what are your all thoughts on Chicago, on Johnson, and what's going on here?
I just want to say that I wish I had Brandon's hair and makeup budget. I saw that and I felt a little envy, but I will flex a bit and say that I had a better fundraising quarter than Brandon. So suck it.
Now Hannah's giving Michael a run for his money on bringing the heat this week. Well done.
It's absurd. I mean, $971 is all he raised in the last quarter. And I mean, and then he tries to say, oh, well, I actually raised $200,000. We just forgot to report it. And it's like, well, you didn't report a single A1. So that means you're trying to say that you raised $200,000 and every contribution was $900 or less when you've got an approval rating of 15%. I mean, the 15% that approve of you must have a lot of resources, because the other 85% aren't writing checks.
Right, basically.
Say you suck at your job.
And what's worse, not raising 900 or being so incompetent that you don't remember to report any of the 200,000? What is worse here?
I've been in an effort to read a lot of books in the last year. Like I said, I'm a very well-read person, as you can tell.
Lane, let Ryan know we got to give Chris more work.
Sorry, I read about 2:00 in the morning when I'm done with my work, Collin. In any case, I'm reading a book on Richard M. Daley, the second Daley the Dumber, as some call him. But it's amazing how he was able to just shake people down, or he'd have Rahm Emanuel call them and call them an idiot on the phone if they didn't give him $1 million. Like all this stuff. These were real fundraising, activities going on here. Even Lori Lightfoot, everyone hated Lori Lightfoot. She sucked as a mayor. Lori Lightfoot could raise some pretty decent money when she put her mind to it. Her team could put their mind to it. They had good connections. That she was pretty well liked amongst the donor class. A lot of conservative donors were giving Lori Lightfoot money in 2019. Brandon Johnson, he's out on an island here. Like, there is literally, early in his mayoralship, a lot of the special interests were giving him money because that's kind of what you do with the mayor of Chicago. You're a wealthy guy. It's like, oh, we got a new mayor in there. We got to give him a check. That's what you do in this town. They're running scared now. They know this guy's going out the door. And I'm sure, the fact that nobody's giving him money, I'm sure people are making calls. Like, hey, don't give this guy another dime. We're just going to squeeze this guy dry. If he wants the CTU's money, he can have it. We're not giving him anything. And even if it's their explanation, oh, we raised $200K, we just forgot. All right, man. Then you guys aren't going to win. They're not going to win. If you can't remember to report A1s, then I don't know what to tell you, man.
So, Chris, I want to, that's my point that I want to make. And Mark already started, and he hit on something pretty interesting because I did some digging. And I think it's the rank and competence that is really my takeaway from this story. So Brandon Johnson opened up his political committee on November 1st of 2017. For those who know, you've got to file a D2 every quarter. So that's 29 D2s that he's had to file. Brandon Johnson has had to amend those reports 35 times. So 29 reports he's filed in total. He's had to file 35 amendments. And some of those are as far as 2 years after, and some of those reports were amended as many as 4 or 5 times in order to finally get them right. Here's the thing. There was a span of like 2.5 years where Brandon Johnson didn't do much politically. So those were basically no activity reports where you just click the button and say, we didn't do anything. So if you cut that out, he has an average of 2 amendments for every report he files. You want to talk about rank and competence for his own committee. The dude can't even file his reports accurately to the point where it's not 1, it's 2 amendments. And I got to tell you, for the committees that I've worked with, if you've got to file more than 1 or 2 amendments, you're freaking out that the State Board of Elections might come after you, because clearly you got problems and clearly you're not filing accurate reports. And that's the whole point of these reports, is to be transparent to the public with where your money's coming from and where you're spending. And they're obviously clearly not doing that because they're not filing those reports accurately. But here's the thing. Okay, you just add to it, just kind of the cherry on top. When he amended his D1 to run for mayor, it took 5 tries to get it right. Go look. It took him 5 times to file the amendment properly to change his committee from county board to running for Chicago mayor. Each time they had to change one thing because they kept screwing something up. And then usually what happens is you get a letter or a call from the State Board of Elections saying, hey, you screwed X up, you need to change it. So then they'd fix it. 5 tries to get it right. The level of incompetence that shows. I mean, 1 try, maybe 2, 5 times. And then there was a 6th, by the way, because once CTU had given them enough money, they had to then add them on as a sponsoring entity. So if you're checking my work, you'll see 6. But that last one wasn't them trying to get the initial report right. 5 times to get the D1 right. This is what I got to talk about here, is the incompetence of Brandon Johnson. And he is running one of the most important cities, obviously not just in the state, but in the country. And that's your mayor.
Well, and I was looking as you were talking. He hasn't filed an A1 since July 5th of 2024. So it's been, 6 months since he's had a
Michael, I saw this level of incompetence just looking at his D2s and D1s. I don't got the time to read all his A1s, but I guarantee you, if someone out there wants to dig through his A1s, if they're this incompetent on their D2s and D1s, their A1s have got to be absolutely atrocious. Somebody should do that research. Somebody who has more time than I do.
Well, I think it just shows you, gives more credence to the theory that obviously there's blood in the water here, and that if somebody really wants to be mayor of Chicago, it's yours for the taking.
No, it's not. It's nobody's for the taking, Butler. There's going to be 19 people running, and we're going to get the 2 worst.
That's a different topic. But
okay, Collin.
Yeah.
You your conversation about incompetency when it comes to campaign finances, it brought up something that I'd repressed in my mind, and it makes me beg the question, which is worse? Brandon Johnson not knowing how to file A1s and forgetting that he raised $200,000 in a quarter, or Paul Vallis getting shaken down for $500,000 for yard signs on street corners? Some people still haven't gotten paid. These were the choices in that election. Which is worse? Why did you make me remember that, Collin? Some people still haven't gotten paid because of that.
Well, honestly, it's 35 amendments, but there's at least one more coming, right? They just told us that this last report is wrong and they're going to be amending it. So they're at 35 and counting. I mean, clearly there's more amendments to come. Hey. All right, let's move on to the next thing. We're going to go into some of those crazy things we've been talking about, those things that you as Republican and conservative leaders, candidates, electeds, grassroots people, these are the things we need to be pointing to rather than, shooting each other in the foot. So let's talk about some of those things. Ooh. Let's talk about some of those things. So CTU, let's talk about Stacy Davis Gates, who is always a gift because she seems to like running her mouth and saying real stupid things. And in the last week, she decided to basically mock special education students, comparing the current and soon to be former CEO of Chicago Public Schools to a special education student who needs an IED and has trouble, I think it was paying attention in class or whatever it was. She got called out roundly by both right and left. So kudos to our friends on the left who did do the right thing and call out Stacy Davis Gates because she deserved it. But just yet again, Stacy Davis Gates just being a gift here of pointing to just how nuts and crazy the left is. They will say anything, they will do anything, they will mock anyone they need to get their agenda passed. And here we go, we're mocking special education students as, you know, someone who cares about the kids. I mean, it's unreal.
Well, the crazy part is she did this. She was speaking at a union meeting to members and then basically, you know, made fun of Pedro Martinez and, you know, brought special ed and people into the equation. I mean, they were so offended that they had to pull her back up on stage, and she apologized later in the meeting for making fun of him. So, yeah, I mean, she just continues and continues to embarrass herself. I mean, she's known for making absurd statements like this. I mean, you look at her Twitter, it's like, oh, if you send your kid to a private school, they're a racist. You're a racist. And while she's sending her kid, her son, to private schools. And then we find out this week that she paid her brother $27,000 to door knock for the school board candidates in Chicago. So it's like,
my job.
What a mess.
Yeah, well, and honestly, if you're somebody right of center, this is what the Dems do to us. This is what the media does to us, is when they find somebody crazy on our side, they put a microphone in front of them as often as possible. I want microphones in front of Stacy Davis Gates as much as possible for as long as she continues to represent CTU. I mean, I will help fund this effort to make sure let's make sure she's got podcasts and daily press conferences. Let's get the Chicago media out, whatever it takes. Stacy Davis Gates, I want her in the news all the time because she just can't help herself.
She's definitely like the Michael Scott of the CTU, and I'm here for it. Every line.
But you mentioned Love is Blind earlier. I mean, I really do think like her, Tiffany Henyard, like we've got some people here who could do some pretty good damage on a reality show.
They've got potential.
Well, that's how they destroyed Tiffany Henyard, is they just kept putting a microphone in front of her. And the fact that she ran 2 different systems of government in Dalton Thornton Township just gave her 2 extra meetings a month to put the microphone in front of her. If the media wants, they can destroy any politician. So Chicago media, if you're watching this, which you're not a member of Pritzker's communication staff, you're not watching this, then you should probably do that. Go to Stacy Davis Gates, put a microphone in front of her. Let's get this mayor out of here, please.
But personally, I don't want her out. So maybe I'll disagree with you on that part. Either way, I mean, this is the hypocrisy. Michael, you flagged in our Discord, you flagged the CTU member who went on that rant about how, you know, they're in this time of racism and fascism and colonization, and then she talked about how great the schools are in San Antonio, Texas. It's like, yeah, but the schools are run by Republicans.
Yeah. She's like, the schools in San Antonio have air conditioning and ESL programs, and they're just doing great. And it's like, well, maybe you should start electing somebody different up here. Maybe we'll have similar situation. I don't know.
Also, my favorite part of the week is this story led Michael Butler to use the word ableist multiple times. And I never thought I'd hear that word out of Michael's mouth.
I had to make sure I was spelling it correctly. So just for the record, took me a couple tries.
Let's talk more craziness. So there's been a bill filed down in Springfield and press conferences and a whole ballyhoo, I don't know what the word is, because there's a group led by several House Democrats, I think House Democrats. No, a senator and a House member, and several far left political groups in Illinois that want to legalize prostitution, and they have they'd like to say, good reasons and good explanations as to why they think this should be the first state in the U.S. to fully legalize the exchange of money for sex among consenting adults. So yet another thing we're going to see down in Springfield, some of the craziness that's being pushed. It's Senator Villanueva and then Representative Gazzardi are the 2 leading sponsors for this. And then you've got some of the usual groups like Equality Illinois and some of the others that are part of this. So anybody have thoughts on this bill?
It's a new kind of economic stimulus. And
I mean, stimulus is the key word, right? So maybe just a new kind of stimulus, but it also brings economics. And what Michael, you said in our internal discussions, you said maybe for the unions it gives them a new route for more union workers. So
what a joke!
Arguing it's good for the economy.
So, Collin, the building that we have our retail stores in, there's old pictures where the 3rd floor used to be called the Paradise Club, and I would tease our members in Woodstock on the city council that if I ever was able to buy this building, I'd only do it if they grandfathered in all previous business uses of the building. Well, now I have it. But the more I think about it, I'm happy the Dems are doing this. And here's why. And here's why I would never get into the business. It's a new industry. So what are the Democrats going to do? Well, they're going to make sure there's proper OSHA and safety standards. They're going to have strict regulation on authorized and forbidden activity. They're going to have a high tax rate. They're going to force them to go to IDFPR for licensing and certification. There's going to be unionization and fees. There'll be price controls. By the time the Dems craft this industry to the way they want all industries to work, no one will be able to afford to or want to work in the industry. So by legalizing it, they might just kill it outright.
Well, there you go. That's Senator Wilcox thinking three layers deep. What I thought was kind of interesting is this bill was created and led by a group called the Sex Worker Advisory Group. It's a coalition of Black and brown current and former sex workers, many of whom are transgender, gender diverse, or queer. What I don't understand is why was this it's not like this is just all sex workers. It's Black and brown sex workers who want this. It's not that it's straight sex workers, which I would imagine is the majority of them. It's a very hyper specific transgender diverse queer group. I don't understand where this.
Don't you understand intersectionality, Collin? Have you not been reading your postmodern American philosophy?
Someone needs to find the story behind this, because how this even came to be seems like it would be a fascinating story.
I mean, it's Illinois. We just live in a perpetual, like, South Park episode. That's the whole point of this, men and women's sports, and let's legalize prostitution, and we'll legalize marijuana, but you got to pay 40% tax on it, so you might as well go buy it from somebody on 10th Street instead, illegally. I mean, it's just such a joke.
Freedom of choice, as long as you choose the things we want you to do.
I'll be interested to see if the accountants will be behind it. Think of all the new 1099s that'll have to be filed every January.
How does that transaction go now? You need to file a W. Like, you come in, you ask that sex worker, like, can you do your thing? And like, well, first you need to file this. I need your W-9. I need proof of your identification. Like, this could be kind of funny.
I bet there will be a lot of bartering between the sex workers and their accountants.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, here you go. It's you're not trading cash for services at that point. All right, let's move to the next crazy thing. And Hannah, I want to start with you on this, just because I've waited till now to ask you about the image, the painting or whatever that is that's behind you. Lighting isn't great, but it looks like it's a steer. It's a bull. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So the next story here is Rachel Ventura wants to outlaw pulling cows' tails, or that's her big thing. Senate Bill 45 that she's pushing to amend the Humane Care for Animals Act. So I'm just curious how you feel, since you're the only one here who's got. This is for bovine, which I think is females over males. I don't know how this whole industry works, but either way, it's a cow that you've got behind you.
I've been waiting for you to ask me, Collin, how I feel about this.
Yeah.
I'd say we're moving in the right direction, and that's all I got. Actually, I have a few more of these. So as you guys talk and really dive into this, I'm just going to be trickling in more of these fun bovine puns.
Or squirting them in. Yeah.
Or see, I can't compete with you, Collin.
Is this a problem? Is this happening? It's for sport, right? So what they're talking about here is colio. This is I had to look this up, a traditional Venezuelan and Colombian sport where they pull cows' tails as part of the sport, because she specifically says it's for entertainment or sport, because this is also done by ranchers when they're trying to control the cows to be able to brand them and neuter them and give them vaccinations and stuff. But she isn't saying that. She's saying specifically for entertainment or sport. So where is this happening other than Venezuela and Colombia? It was outlawed a decade ago in Brazil and other South American countries. So in 2025 in Illinois, where the heck is this happening?
Well, Collin, you have to understand with the migrant crisis and the buses, which I guess stopped. I haven't heard about buses in a while. I don't know. But like with the migrant crisis, we're getting a lot of new residents in the state of Illinois, and maybe they're not going to be Chicago White Sox fans. Maybe they're not going to be Chicago Cubs fans. Maybe they're going to be really into cow tail pulling fans. I don't know. I'm a fan of the I don't have a clever joke for this. Hannah, you got something for me here?
I'd say you're going. Oh man, I was somehow going to weave utterly in there, but I've got nothing for you,
He's just
Chris.
utterly
You're on your
ridiculous.
own.
Utterly hopeless
He's going in
in
an utterly
this riff I'm
ridiculous
doing
direction.
right now.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of like what, a year or so ago, whenever they said that they wanted, or their big priorities were making it illegal to pet a bear, and then also making it illegal to own a kangaroo.
America, damn it.
This is what we're focused on. These are the issues that are impacting Illinoisans. I think these members have just spent way too much time on PETA's website. They just need to go somewhere else. Like find another page to look at.
You want them to steer clear from that website?
Steer clear.
God,
This guy.
I quit. 2 weeks notice, Collin. I quit.
How are they gonna regulate? Like they're gonna have people there in people's fields just waiting for them to pull a tail. I don't.
That's gotta be a great patronage job. Do I get
arrest?
Do I get freaking state pension if I'm the guy who's in charge of going to the rodeo and making sure they don't pull any cows' tails? Do I get IMRF if I do that? What's the service not required?
I was nervous that adding this to the agenda might be a mistake, but it wasn't. This has been a lot of fun.
I hate you, Collin Corbett.
But so apparently you can pull your cow's tail in the privacy of your own home or your ranch. But if you're in
you can pull
fairgrounds, off limits.
You can pull whatever you want in the privacy of your home. All right, buddy. Nobody here.
Pull your cow's tail all you want at home, just not at McHenry County Fairgrounds. That's where we draw the line.
What about Outline putting a tail on the donkey?
Cows to be embarrassed.
I mean, Craig's got a good point. Not tail on the donkey. This comes up now. Like this is a big thing.
All those childhood games.
Yeah, that all that does is perpetuate this idea of herding animals. So no more. That's Rachel Ventura's next bill. Is no more pinning the tail on the donkey.
I remember when they said you can't say bring home the bacon either because that's offensive to pigs. Kill two birds with one stone. Well, that's a problem too. I mean, you can go on their website. You can see the list. I mean, it's another example of us just living in a perpetual South Park episode.
When we get down to Springfield later this month, I'll see if she'll do a friendly amendment to forbid cow tipping as well.
Craig, that would be legendary. All right, we're going to quit while we're not ahead. All right, so this next section is something new we're doing this year where we're taking some of our news topics, and instead of having a longer discussion about them, we're going to go quick through them. This is the news you can use, essentially, again, to our audience. We're trying to equip you. So we've got, I think, 5 this week topics that I want to put in front of you, just things that you could be pointing to or using as you're talking with voters, talking with the media, doing social media posts, I don't know, whatever you're doing to move the ball forward. Move the ball forward. There's some things you can use that are helpful. So, came out this last week that Illinois has the second highest outmigration rate in the country. Now, if you ask Pritzker or all of his pals in the media, they'll tell you no, outmigration is not actually happening. But time after time after time, we get the data, we get the states back, and it's shown and proven that people are leaving the state at record numbers. 60% is our outmigration rate, 59.94, second highest in the country behind New Jersey. What they're going to tell you next is that this is just a Midwestern thing. This is regional trends. And yet when you look at all the top states on this list, it's New Jersey, Illinois, New York, California, Massachusetts, North Dakota, Wyoming, Mississippi, Nebraska, Colorado. Illinois is the only Midwestern state to make the list. So if this was a regional thing that everyone just happens to be leaving the Midwest, we would see other Midwestern states here, and we don't. There certainly is something to be said that there's a lot of blue states that are losing people. That would be a trend that I would agree with. But overall, this is absolutely something you can point to show yet again the challenges that we face under Democratic rule in this state. Anyone have any quick thoughts? Nope. That covers it. All right, moving to the next one. So Pritzker, I have to imagine, Craig, you're going to have some thoughts on this. The medical debt relief program. Pritzker said that for just $10 million, we will wipe out $1 billion in debt and provide debt relief for what did he say? 300 and some odd thousand. My notes, I 340,000 low-income Illinoisans we will help for just $10 million. Well, in the last week, it came out, this huge announcement. The media covered it. They said, wow, isn't this amazing? For that $10 million investment that the state made, we have wiped out 72 million. And I don't know what you guys think. I'm sometimes not good at math, but 72 million is not 1 billion. In fact, it's 7% of 1 billion. So Pritzker's grand promise that he was going to wipe out $1 billion in medical debt actually ended up being 72 million. And wouldn't you know it, none of those media sources actually called him out on that. They just talked about how good of a thing it was that we wiped out $72 million in medical debt. So yet again, the media, even on the most basic things, can't hold our governor responsible. He promised X and he only delivered 7% of that. I feel like that's something we should talk about.
It's crazy.
I was kind of excited that the media actually was looking into how something played out, because that's one of the biggest issues we have. Lots of promises when the bill comes forward, but we don't go back a year, 2 years, 3 years later. I mean, we have sunsets that we just routinely re-up. I thought the sunset was the point you go back and say, did it actually meet the intent that you were looking to do? Now, in this case, I just want to know which business collectors, debt collectors are tied in with the governor and got him to give them $10 million for debt they were likely never going to collect anyways. So wiping out debt or wiping out debt that was never going anywhere, who really benefited here?
Yeah, that's the key. I mean, I'd love to see some transparency on who actually got this money. Not the individuals, but the people in between who were passing this money along. Obviously, I think there's more of a story to be told that we'll surely never hear. But Craig, to your point, yet again, another promise made by politicians that nowhere comes anywhere near. And yet we're going to believe the next time that they say, hey, if you just give us this taxpayer money over here, it will lead to hundreds of billions of dollars of economic impacts. And then nobody actually checks to see if that actually happened. All right, next thing here. Chicago's credit rating has been downgraded. It is now 2 notches above junk status. Brandon Johnson, of course, wants you to know that everything's fine. There are no problems. But S&P disagrees. They say that his 2025 budget showed structural imbalance, little willingness to cut spending, and growing certainty about the city's ability to raise new revenue. And I found this kind of interesting. Chicago now has the same credit rating as Mexico, Indonesia, and Bulgaria. So there you go. Great company to be in, Chicago. Way to go. You're killing it.
Between that and his quarterly reports, he just really has a hard time with figuring things out, doesn't he?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about Brandon Johnson during our Clown of the Week segment, because we always talk about Brandon Johnson during our Clown of the Week segment.
I'm going to start calling Brandon Johnson Brandon Rauner. That's going to be my new thing starting this week.
I mean, no matter how much you dislike Bruce Rauner, there's no way you could compare the two. I mean, Johnson,
yes, I can. You're going to watch me over for as long as I'm on this podcast. You're going to watch me.
You're trying to start something no one's going to care.
You started this, Collin. You put me on this podcast. Brandon Johnson's Bruce Rauner now. Good job.
Next thing here, the Civic Federation. And yeah, all right, so Civic Federation kind of does this, but they've warned that a state takeover may be necessary for Chicago public schools, citing a number of stats, including obviously the fact that they're facing a deficit of at least $750 million, if not $1 billion that they're facing, coming to Craig and his colleagues down in Springfield for a handout to solve that problem. But there's also several other things in this report that I think are pretty crazy. You look at, since 2019, student enrollment has dropped by 85,000, and yet staff has grown by 9,100. And I understand, we work with a lot of school districts, that you have to increase staff because the needs of kids today are so much more, because many parents don't actually parent their kids anymore. So I get that there are more needs, but other school districts find a way to do it in a more balanced way that they can actually afford. Debt has exploded in Chicago, and you look at some of these schools where they've got schools with very few students. It highlighted 49 different schools where the buildings are less than a third full. And just lots of things in this report that point to all the problems in CPS. And their solution is, of course, a state takeover, which to me, first of all, obviously is never going to happen. But also, if you think the state's going to do a better job, you haven't seen all the state departments and all of their struggles, but whatever, it's neither here nor there. Anybody have thoughts on this? All right, we said it. It's enough. People want to go home. I get it. Last thing here, last quick hit for news. Is something Lane's going to bring this up on screen in post, but I found this kind of interesting. I saw this graphic based on Census Bureau data. since 1967 running through 2023. What we've seen is a significant change in incomes. And what you always see is Democrats like to point to the wealth gap between the wealthy and the poor. They like to point to how these brackets, the rich, it's growing. And actually, they're right. Those who make over $200,000 back in 1967, and all these numbers have been adjusted for inflation. So in today's dollars, back in 1967. So just understand that. Only 2% of Americans were in that bracket of being over 200K. Now it's up to 14%. Another bracket that increased, 100K to 200K. That went from 13%, doubled and more, up to 27%. So they want to point to that. Look, rich, look at the rich are getting, but the point here is individuals. And I want to point you to the bottom portion of that graphic, that under 35K, that used to be 31% of our population. It's now only 21% of our population. That is good news, great progress. 35 to 100K, that used to be 54% of our population. It's now down to 38% of our population. Again, the point being that everyone likes to say that the sky is falling, capitalism is horrible, it's ruining everything, yet the truth is that it's helping everyone in this country become more wealthy, and you're seeing it help even more so those in those lower income brackets be able to have upward movement into the upper income brackets. And isn't that the point? We want low income to move up into middle income. We want middle income to move up into upper income. That is the point of our system. And based on this graphic, you're seeing some progress and some improvement. So that's a good thing. We shouldn't be complaining about it. We should be highlighting the fact that this is a good thing. We are creating opportunity for American workers to move up the ladder, and let's do more of that.
Respecting the fact we live in the most prosperous country in human history and the most prosperous time in human history, I don't know how one looks at those numbers and still thinks that like the Americans aren't struggling right now, because they are. That even if we have a greater percentage of the population making more money, money's not going as far as it used to. I don't know. I think there's bigger problems.
There's problems. We talk about them over and over in these episodes. There are absolutely problems, but the point is we are making progress. More and more Americans. That's why you see the more and more Americans moving into that middle income bracket who now, like we talk about it, minorities who used to be in that lower income bracket, they only cared about the minimum wage. Now they have different concerns because they're not as much in that lower income bracket. We're seeing upward movement. And that is the point of our capitalist society. Just want to point that out.
So I love that, Collin. I'm always with statistics. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. So I'll have to dig in a little bit on those numbers. But to Chris's point, yeah, people are moving up the ladder, but government is still here kicking the feet out from the ladder. So climb, get knocked down, climb, get knocked down. And unfortunately, that's where so many of our government structures have gone into, that the government believes they know better. And we just got to get to leaving people to do what's in their best interest and allow them to thrive. And that's why you have that outmigration in Illinois.
Listen, I'm just trying 2025. I'm trying to bring some positivity since, I've been a little negative sometimes, especially we get late in the election cycle. I'm just trying to bring some positivity.
Colin,
You're in the
I
wrong
got your
party
back
in
on
the wrong
this.
state to be positive, Colin.
Hannah, what were you gonna say?
I got your back. I feel like Chris and Craig, they're trying to PP in your Cheerios a little bit, and I just say, like, I got you. Like, let's celebrate that. I'm so glad you're speaking like a true millionaire over there. Like, you're pumped. So I'm happy for you in your golden mansion, your golden toilet.
You mentioned Cheerios. I learned my parents potty trained me by putting Cheerios in the toilet and saying "bomb the Cheerios." They stopped doing.
I didn't need to know that.
When they came into the bathroom, and the Cheerios
that.
were gone because I was eating them afterwards. So the Cheerios
I never
creates bad memories for me. All right, let's have some fun. I just put myself on the clown list for the week. Who else do y'all want to put on the OG and clown list for the week? People you want to nominate, either good or bad, for this week. What do you got?
I've got two clowns this week. So the first one is Congresswoman Ramirez from here in Illinois. They asked her if she was going to the inauguration, and her response was that she would feel unsafe at the inauguration because she is a brown woman and a daughter of immigrants. What a joke. Just show up. It's your civic duty. You're a congressman. Like, you show up for all of them, regardless of whether or not you win or lose. That's the way it's supposed to be. But the other one, I know we had talked about Samantha Steele, the Cook County Border Review member that got pulled over for a DUI back in November. Well, I was looking on the reports on State Board of Elections. She was pulled over for a DUI on November 10th. And on November 13th, Speaker Welch wrote her a check for $1,000. So what a joke. And of all people to write $1,000 check to, that's what you're at 3 days after the DUI.
I mean, listen, I love dinging Welsh, so I'm just going to let the point stand. More than likely, it just got deposited then, but whatever. We're having some fun. Go ahead and ding Welsh. It's fine by me. Who else has got thoughts?
How about Hannah for OG for outraising Brandon Johnson?
Okay. I'm in for this. I'm in for this.
All right, so I've got a clown. This will be pretty nuanced, but down in Springfield, the new legislative car plates came out.
Okay.
And we used to have a relatively nice, colorful plate that had the state flag emblem and colored out. This year, they are very plain, all blue. And I happened to see the Secretary of State that evening. I'm like, I can't believe you're kicking the red out of Illinois. Good attempt, but these plates are horrible. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Here he is, brand new plates for all of the General Assembly, who he's got to work with, and he didn't know about it. So I showed him the pictures. I showed him how I'm going to doctor it up, add the red back into Illinois. It's only a misdemeanor and $250 fine for defacing the plates, but it just absolutely ridiculous. I can't say that that's his reason for it, but not knowing that the plates had come out or that was been the design, that's my clown.
If only someone had told him while he was doing tummy time, and he would have remembered that.
There you go. For my OG, Senator Tom Bennett, who retired this past assembly, so dedicated. He went down to Springfield on Saturday when absolutely nothing was going to happen. He already hadn't been feeling good. Got sick, unfortunately, was not able to come back for the Monday, Tuesday, so missed his final stuff. He asked me to read his speech at the end. I was very honored to do that. So absolutely one class act that we are going to miss in the General Assembly. So State Senator Tom Bennett.
Here, I'd second that for sure. I've got a handful, but I usually like to let everyone go first because y'all
All right.
some of mine.
I'll balance out Butler's 2 clowns and I'll give 2 OGs.
Okay.
The person who shoveled my driveway, like that was amazing. I love walking outside and realizing I do not have to freeze my tail off. Well, not that I was going to do it anyway. I was going to call somebody, but still they saved me money. So, but truly that's what my campaign was all about, was like neighbors helping neighbors. So kind of seeing that and being on the receiving end, that was fabulous. So thanks to the stranger who did that. And then the other OG, this week, obviously, with us getting a new president, it's so funny watching Americans kind of process and navigate through this. And I'll knock on wood that nothing crazy is going to happen. But it looks like right now the way we process is through memes. And so all the meme generators on Instagram and TikTok, like I just say thank you. This has been the most fun week, seeing everything about Greenland and Elon, and it's just, you guys are all a blessing.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, scrolling through, like X has been great. Just like scrolling through it, especially now that it's not censored, like all the fun stuff you get to see.
Yeah.
And I also like the balance where it's like some political stuff, yes, but also just like lots of fun stuff, and
Yeah.
it's kind of nice now. So, all right, let me give some. I'll start with OGs. Michael, I got to go with you, man. Like it's today, as we record this on Thursday, it's your 6-year anniversary at Core Strategies. So, congratulations for putting up with us for 6 years, and thanks for sticking around, buddy.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's been a blast.
You just got to stop him from invading senators' places of residence in Springfield after midnight.
Hey, I was invited.
I don't even want to know.
Looking forward to the backstory on that one. Tyler Chasteen, the GOP committeeman for the 5th Ward in Chicago, was at an Institute of Politics panel and literally asked Mayor Johnson, "Why are you so unpopular?" during the question and answer session, which I just thought was brilliant and amazing. Now, he did it actually in a pretty articulate way and then ended with that. So it was pretty well done the way he did it. And it ended up going viral because Johnson just sort of muttered for 2 minutes. It was, if you haven't watched it, you got to watch it. It's horrible and beautiful all at the same time. So that's another one of my OGs. Tyler, well done on that. I'm going to surprise some people. Chris Welch gets my OG for the week for putting Republican Representative Dan Swanson to lead the Veterans Affairs Committee. We rarely see bipartisanship in Springfield, and Welsh is one of those who tends to be fairly partisan. But you know what? When there is a tiny baby step towards bipartisanship, I want to be positive and call that out. So congratulations to Representative Swanson, and good job to Chris Welsh. That's a tiny sliver of bipartisanship, and I like it. Last, we haven't mentioned, Charlie Meyer is on all of our thoughts and in all of our prayers. He just gets a default OG here because he's going to kick cancer's ass. Announced this week he has prostate cancer. He's getting it dealt with. Charlie's a fighter. He's gonna beat this thing, and we'll give him an OG before he beats it. We'll give him another OG after he beats it. All right, I got some clowns. Because I always got some clowns. So we got to go. One of our viewers sent this to me because I missed it last week. So thank you. So it's a week-old story, but we got to go to Winnebago County for a Clown of the Week nomination because the Rockford police arrested 41-year-old Winnebago County board member John Sweeney, who was drunk and fell asleep in a Taco Bell drive-thru, and also had a concealed carry violation at the same time because he was carrying illegally. So well done, Winnebago County board member, for falling asleep drunk in a Taco Bell drive-thru. We all get it. Listen, when you had too much, Taco Bell is the mecca. It's what you want, but you got to handle it properly, especially if you're an elected official. Maybe don't fall asleep drunk in their parking lot. Be a little smarter than that. So that's my first Clown of the Week nomination. Thank you to our loyal viewer for passing that along. Next, Joe Barrios, despite however many times we've done this, has never been a Clown of the Week nominee, so I've got to put him in there, even though this is really for Francisco Perez, a former employee under Joe Barrios, who was charged with taking bribes from a lawyer and accepting sports tickets, restaurant meals, and other bribes. And is intending to plead guilty, it looks like. So both he and Joe Barrios get Clowns of the Week nomination as well. This last one's, I need to learn more about the story, and Craig, it's in your area, so maybe you could set me straight. But when this individual filed to run for office, it was a big thing. This guy by the name of Walter Moist was running for District 155, which is Crystal Lake and Cary. Far left, member of the Democratic Party, has spoken out at McHenry County board meetings. Lots of far leftist views, has criminal complaints, has all sorts of problems in his background. I saw a number of conservatives raise a problem with this dude running, and then I went to look for those posts before our episode, and they're all deleted. So I don't know if they're no longer running. I don't know if there's more to the story. It's a little bit about him running. It's mostly about this. Have you ever heard a more unfortunate name for a candidate for public office? Moist. Walter Moist. I feel like you're coming into that election with a huge disadvantage because there's a lot of people who are going to say no just because they're not going to check the box named next to the dude named Moist. So I don't know where you want to take that, but just that alone, but just being born with that name, I would have changed the last name personally because I don't know how you get elected with that name. But anyways, having some fun. That's the point of this segment.
It is a good 5-letter name for signs.
I mean, it fits on the sign, but I mean, nobody likes the word moist. I mean, there's words I think that are worse, like wetness, but moist for most people is like their number one most hated word. So, well.
And it'll be in blue if he's a Democrat. So
it works out, right? Maybe do some little droplets on there with the signs. I mean, have fun with it. All right, let's move on. Final closing thoughts from everybody. Thank you guys for being here. We're so glad to have you all with us. Let's start with Chris, your final thoughts for the week.
Well, everyone, I hope you had a wonderful week. We have the inauguration of our once and future president on Monday. So all you plan trusters who actually thought Trump was going to win, it's a good day for you. And if you're someone like Collin who thought Trump was going to lose, then it's not going to be a good day for you. So everyone enjoy your inauguration party. Stay safe out there and have a wonderful rest of the week.
I mean, during your closing statement, you're allowed to say whatever you want, but saying something so blatantly, obviously false. I mean, I did predict he was going to win from like 2 years before the election even happened, but that's fine.
Nah, you were all behind Nikki Haley. I don't want to hear him. I don't want to hear it.
There's a difference between wanting him to win and predicting he would win. Those are two very different things. Anyways, Mark, bring some sanity back, will you please? And give closing thoughts.
Just appreciate the opportunity to be here. Encourage everyone to have optimism. 2026 can be a good year for Republicans. Got to get to work on it now. I think there's a lot of good reasons for us, so keep it up.
100% agree. Thanks, Mark. Senator Wilcox, your final thoughts for the week.
Just avoid to get the doldrums here in January. Yes, the General Assembly is going to go back into session. Yes, there's going to be bills that are going to make your life more miserable. Yes, the sunshine isn't quite going to come out, but we're only a few weeks away from the groundhog, letting us know maybe we've got an early spring. So Groundhog Day in Woodstock, February 2nd.
Well played. And it is the best groundhog celebration outside of the one in Pennsylvania. And it's huge. It's thousands of people. It's always massive every time. And I'll be honest, a lot of fun. I think I've gone 5 or 6 times and it's a lot of fun. All right. I am having a tough time. Michael or Hannah, I don't know who to choose. So I'm going to say it's a tie and our guest always gets the win in a tie. So Michael, well done this week, but give us your closing thoughts.
All right. Well, I've got to say, I mean, obviously inauguration on Monday, that's a big deal. Chris and I, from the very beginning, we were consistent. MAGA hat stays on, and look at what we were able to accomplish. So I know I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully everybody can crack a can of Busch Light or pop a bottle of champagne, do something to celebrate, because we sure as hell needed this to happen. Obviously I was going to say something about Charlie Meyer, and, he used to be my state rep before the remap, great guy. And obviously he's in our thoughts and prayers as he fights through this. But it sounds like everybody is very optimistic on what the result is going to be. So that's good to hear. And if you think you might need an attitude adjustment, you probably need an attitude adjustment, especially on our side of the aisle right now. So maybe think about that over the weekend. And
Michael sounds like a principal. If you don't, you'll be sent to the principal's office.
Yeah, we can all come back to work on Tuesday, you better have shaped up.
Jeez.
Or else.
I like it.
We got a country to save, and we're not going to save it with bad attitudes.
All right, Hannah, you brought the heat. Thanks for doing that. You're fine with the final word on our episode.
Awesome. Well, I'm like the most competitive person probably in Illinois. So I'm so excited. I won this awesome title of Bring the Heat. Michael, also, I have that same Patagonia sweater. So I don't know what that says about you, but
this is the male version.
Okay. If that's what you want to tell your friends, that's cool.
All right.
But yeah, I thank you guys for having me on here. It's going to be a good year. So let's keep our chin up and let's just be kind to each other.
I like it. Closing this out, as a reminder, we've got trainings for candidates coming up throughout the state. If you're interested, make sure you go to leadershipinstitute.org. If you want to host a training in your region and you can get 25-ish people together who are candidates either in 25, maybe 26 or down the line, let us know. We'll happily hook you up with LI to set that up. I will see you at those trainings. I am taking time away from my precious boy to do these trainings. I got to go to Pennsylvania in about 20 minutes to do some trainings out there. So please, we need to make sure we are prepared to win. As Mark said, there are wins to be had. We can absolutely win in 2025. We can absolutely win in 2026. It starts now. Get prepared, get everything ready, whether it's making sure you've got a plan, getting out there and building relationships. There's so much to do now, so you're ready to win. And we start passing petitions in, 7 months? So it's not that far away, y'all. Let's get to it. In the meantime, we will catch you next week on our Smoke-Filled Room. Thanks, everybody.